Stick 'em up! This is Furby. So this week I set myself the task of working on an Fuck! So last week I worked on 4 new unholy freakish Furbies, as you can see here. Now let's take a look at the making of. After 3D sculpting the faceplates, I print them on Elgumar's printers, and then clean them off, removing the supports and post-curing. To get the transparent lens effect on the eyes, I mask off the transparent resin. This is an absolute nightmare to get rid of unless you apply at least 3 coats. Also, I should probably mention this is Viejo liquid masking fluid. With the parts all masked, it's time to attach them to the handles. For the faceplates, because they are often going to be coming off and on, I use butyl, and hot glue for the claws. And it's priming time. I'm airbrushing Molotow black primer. For the spider face, I'm just layering some very transparent layers of ink over the black base to create some underlying shading before I go in with the highlights. I'm also going in and shooting some red on those claws. And now from above, I'm spraying a lighter shade of blue as a highlight to create a graduated effect. With the base coats applied to the arachnid Furby, it's time to work on those freaky cherub mofos. For 2 of these, I'm going for a darker palette, so I'm going with a very subtle grey highlight for the face and claws. Again, this time I'm going in with white to pick out the fingernails. This guy's going to be a bright albino cherub, so I'm spritzing him with some white. With the white base coat applied, now I'm darkening the circles around the eyes and adding the same shade of black for the claws. Now normally I do this step first, but I forgot, so now I'm disassembling all the Furbies. It's kind of like flaying an animal in Red Dead 2, except more screws. But once they're removed, it's time to start prying off the fur, and then remove more screws. After prying off all the plastic joints, I have to sever the sewing connection around the ear. And finally, it's ready to paint. With the same primer, I prime his tongue and beak. And now I'm adding the highlights. For some of these, I want their beaks to stay black, so I'm simply highlighting the tongue there. Now I'm going with red to paint that aforementioned tongue. Now that that's all applied, I'm going in with varnish to seal that all in. This is Gloss Floor Pledge varnish. It sounds a bit weird to spritz floor polish through an airbrush, but it gets the job done. Now it's time to peel off that pesky masking fluid. Let's hope I applied enough layers that this will be an easy task. And yes, like a dream. Originally I was intending on painting the eyes of the white Furby black, and to give white eyes to the black Furbies, but then I decided, let's just go with a more demonic red, because why not? So as you can see, I'm spritzing the colour on the back of the Furby faceplate, This way it will be visible through the clear lenses on the front. Now I'm mixing up an oil wash. This is oil paint mixed with white spirit. Normally I'd apply this to all the faceplates, but since they're all dark, the only one that really needs it is the white faceplate here. So I apply it in a liberal amount and then start dabbing it off on the faceplate and the claws. To keep the paint scheme consistent, I also do this on the beak and tongue. And now I'm going in with a second layer of varnish, just to make sure it's properly protected and also to seal the oil paints in on the white Furby. And on top of that layer of gloss varnish, I'm going in with a matte varnish. This is my own homebrew enamel-based varnish that's made by thinning down wood varnish with white spirit. It's quite strong, and that's why I opt to use this over just a pre-bought option. Main downside though is that it stinks to high hell, so definitely make sure you've got a respirator and good ventilation. Now I'm applying a clear gel nail polish varnish to the nails that I'll then throw into the UV chamber to cure. And I'm applying the same varnish to the eyes and make them nice and shiny. To me, this is the stage where the freak really starts to come to life with those eerie reflections. Time to tackle the fur pattern and sewing, which is frankly my least favourite part of the process. I hacked up a Furby fur coating and used that to make a new pattern, and now I'm cutting that same pattern out of this fur here. First I go in with a marker just to trace the outskirts of the pattern before I go in with a scalpel. I also mark the areas where the ears will need to be pushed through and give them a little slice. Time to sew. I've used pins to press the fur together where the sewing needs to go, and yeah, using my trusty sewing machine to join it up. The first of these Furbies I made I hand sewed, and that was an absolute nightmare which I will never go back to, so yeah. Did I mention I detest sewing? With that out of the way, it's time to add the faceplates to the Furby. I'm using a generous amount of hot glue to attach the face here. Since the more glue you use, the sturdier the connection will be. If you notice here, I also use a tiny dab of hot glue, and then once the faceplate is connected, I push up the upper jaw so that it's frozen. This allows the lower jaw to seem more connected to the upper jaw of the faceplate. Now I'm pulling his fur coat over his body and popping those ears through the ear holes. Once he's suitably coated, it's time to start gluing the fur around the faceplate. Again, I use hot glue for this task. With these weird freaky cherub Furbies, it's a little more difficult because of the size of the faceplate. There's not much room for purchase, so I have to be very delicate about where I apply the hot glue so it doesn't screw up the paint. So yeah, working on this guy was a little more finicky than Save a Spider, but it's worth it. Now it's time to add the ears. Again, this was a pattern that I made from the original Furby ear, and once I throw it on there, I give in a nice bit of gluing and it's attached. Now I'm doing the same for the rest of these little freaks. I felt that the Furby fur was a little too clean, so I'm just adding some subtle black shading to it. This is done by watering down acrylic inks and spritzing them through my airbrush. I normally do this before I attach the faceplate and while the fur's still separate, but I'm a forgetful guy, what can I say? With the paint dried, it's time to attach the claws. To do this, I make holes in the fur, 2 holes to be exact, and feed through a thick zip tie. You may have noticed the holes in the claws. This is to also feed the zip tie through, and once the zip tie is passed through the hole, it allows me to seal it and make a pretty permanent seal for the claw with the fur. Once the claws are all nice and even now, I snip off the excess of the zip tie and the claws are attached. Now I'm just reattaching the little tummy sensor that I took out when I disassembled the Furby. And the final stage is again using hot glue to glue around the fur to the bottom of the battery pack of the Furby. And they are spawned! Let's take a look at them! Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you found watching the development of these freaks at least somewhat entertaining. These guys are all still available from my store as of this recording, but I'll be making plenty more Furbs in the future, and I guarantee there'll at least be one left. So yeah, thanks so much for watching again, and see you later.